have to start thinking about it in that sense.
I'm identified as the discussant, and I wanted to maybe just offer some comments about the first couple of papers and then pause because people here have been sitting and listening for a while, and maybe I can chime in on the last few papers. Lisa began our discussion today talking about this social movement, philosophy for children, and I think the point of philosophy for children in terms of suggesting that we don't have to go through some high cognitive exercise in learning about philosophy before we can actually begin to think philosophically is an important one. And I think of it as well as important in terms of a movement, and I am curious about science, technology, and society as another movement, which is also attempting to stir ethical awareness through education. And I think this whole panel has been arguing basically in favor of a vision of integrating ethics into both professional education as well as K-12 education. And I do think that both Ina and Robinson's paper both speak very specifically to integrating ethics into engineering and science education, and Barbara into technology education. And I think also Ina's some of the information that she cited in terms of the division between educators who do work in science, in the case of your study, but I wonder if it would be valid to generalize somewhat in terms of these disciplines of science, math, engineering, and technology, feeling that it perhaps is not within their realm to address ethics, whereas people in the humanities who feel very comfortable, so obviously people who have backgrounds in philosophy and then literature, history, social studies within the school settings, so that there may be that split and that division within schools, school staffs, and it may filter up as well, although I suspect that as professionals, scientists feel very comfortable and are very conversant in ideas of ethics and have to be trained professionally. It's part of their professional training, I should say. Now, in suggesting that, I also want to bring forth, I think Ina's paper does lead us to think about partiality and positionality, or particularity, I want to say, not partiality, particularity. So Ina brought up that ethics are not necessarily universal, and I think this is an important point that gets brought up particularly by people who identify as critical ethicists, or with critical ethics that look specifically at questions of power. And how does the topic of ethics or social and emotional learning look from the position of somebody with a very small amount of power or low power in our society or in their society versus from the perspective of somebody with a lot of power. So somebody, you mentioned, Ina, the position of somebody who is a professional and may have different professional allegiances and affiliations that push them this way and that in terms of ethical and values kinds of decisions. And Victoria brought up the position of students with special needs, quite often who are transferring from schools who have already had many years of feeling victimized in that lower power position within the world of children, and how their sense of ethics might be shaped and informed from that position within the school structure and the social structure that they've been living within. So I do think that one of the key questions for us to consider, maybe following along on some of the thought experiments that Robinson presented, one of them is the mother test, is to think about the position of the other. So the other is somebody who has to be very distant from us in experience, place. So that's a real challenge for all of us to consider.